Welcome to the Painter Marketing Mastermind podcast, a show created to help painting company owners build a thriving painting business that does well over $1 million in annual revenue. I'm your host, Brandon Pierpont, founder of Painter Marketing Pros and creator of the popular PCA educational series, Learn, Do, Grow, Marketing for Painters. In each episode, I'll be sharing proven tips, strategies, and processes from leading experts in the industry on how they found success in their painting business. We will be interviewing owners of the most successful painting companies in North America and learning from their experiences. In this series titled A Painter's Dream, Jason Paris will be discussing what makes the painting industry so attractive to ambitious entrepreneurs and how painting company owners can capitalize on current and future opportunities. It is a 4-part series. In episode 1, Jason discussed macroeconomic trends and how the ebbs and flows of the economy should affect decision-making and planning within your painting company. In episode 2, Jason dove into the influx of young talent into the industry and what that means for all painting company owners. In episode 3, Jason outlined what you need to do in order to make your painting company sellable, allowing you the option for a lucrative exit. And in the final episode, episode 4, this episode, Jason will elaborate on his philosophies of business and how they apply to you and your painting company. If you want to ask Jason questions related to anything in this podcast series, you can do so on our exclusive Painter Marketing Mastermind podcast forum on Facebook. Just search for Painter Marketing Mastermind podcast forum on Facebook and request to join the group, or type in the URL facebook.com/groups/Painter Marketing Mastermind. Again, that URL is facebook.com/groups/Painter Marketing Mastermind. There you can ask Jason questions directly by tagging him with your question so you can see how anything discussed here applies to your particular company. Jason is the chair of the board of directors of the PCA and founder of Paris Painting, the most successful painting company that Painter Marketing Pros has worked with to date. Jason, welcome to episode 4. Thanks for conducting this series for us, man.
We made it. We're finally here.
I am terrified. I do not know what you're going to do. Well, I know a little bit because you outlined it 5 minutes for me. But I've been worried about this one for about 6 weeks.
Yep. So this is one that we laid out. We said we're going to do a 4-part series, and 1, 2, and 3 made a lot of sense. And then, this seemed like the fun one for me to just throw out there.
Just spitball.
And now here we are, and we have to deliver. So here we go. But we're going to talk
philosophies of business,
basically business philosophies and like you said, how they apply to your business. And there's, this is like an infinite well of conversational topics. And so spend a little bit of time thinking about what are some of the foundational things for how we run our company, how we run the companies here at All of Holdings, obviously the company of Paris Painting, and then our other businesses as well. And this is something that people who followed me around the internet land have heard me say plenty of times, but the philosophy is the blue ocean concept, right? It's kind of this idea of there's a lot of, you call it growth mindset, that there's a lot of opportunity out there, right? It's like a blue ocean of opportunity, right? It's not this fixed mindset or that you're like limited in what you can achieve. And the way that that's kind of strung out through words has been your only competition is your ability to execute your business model. Now that is super, super true in residential repaint. But for whatever reason, maybe, and I think it's changed quite a bit, but 5 years ago, that was very, very antithetical to how most people's paradigm was. Most people viewed, my ability to succeed is determined by who's in my market and who I'm competing with and how well they do and all these weird little things, which just doesn't play out in residential repaint. I keep saying residential repaint because I'm not a commercial painter. I'm not an industrial painter. I've always laid out the example of, I'll just say, this is a premise. I like to win. And so in residential repaint, I think cooperation is the best way to win. If I were painting, just water towers in the state of Minnesota, I'd be slashing people's tires, right? I would not be cooperating. I'd be competing competitively in a zero-sum game, right? This would not be a blue ocean. That would not be a blue ocean. But we do operate in a blue ocean, specifically residential repaint. So that's the first philosophy of business is your only competition is your ability to execute your business model. It truly is a numbers game.
So if you're painting water towers, because you probably have to have relationships or contracts with municipalities, things like that, that's a zero-sum game. Residential repaint, your point is essentially that there's enough work to go around. So it's really working together. You can actually
You're
get
not
more.
limited. Yeah, you're not limited by the market cap. And water towers, and this is just a philosophical, like a hypothetical. So I don't know. Maybe there are way too many water towers. I don't know.
I don't think there are.
But conceptually, I'd say like the water tower thought experiment, you're limited by the market cap, right? There's only so many water towers. Let's say you can only get a third of them. Let's say there's three really competitive people. That's going to dictate what your business looks like. In residential repaint, I am not limited by market cap, right? I'm not limited by the revenue of jobs out there and the percent of those jobs I think I can get. I'm limited by how well our business functions, how well we execute the model that the business is laid out as. And so there's a couple of different layers to that. What's your ability to execute? So how focused and disciplined and skilled are the people that are operating that system? But then another component is, what is that architecture? What is that business model? And how easily can it be executed on? Right. This is where you start to see trade-offs of different desires or business types or preferences. Right. And so you can have like an ultra craftsmanship oriented painting company, which just doesn't, it's harder to scale quickly for sure. So no one will argue it's harder to scale quickly than like a value-based painting company. Right. And so you kind of have your different spheres of painting philosophies, for lack of a better term. You'd have like the craftsmanship orientated, cheap, price focused painter, and then that value focused painter. And which niche you decide to kind of brand yourself with will oftentimes dictate the architecture of the company. And some architectures are easier to execute at scale than others.
Yeah. So the basically three different tiers, the craftsmanship, the very high end, very meticulous attention to detail, kind of probably a much more labor intensive project, and realistically a lower market cap because only so many people.
Yeah, lower market cap. So maybe depending on what market you're in, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, lower pool to pull from for people that want to buy that service, and then a more challenging labor market and who can perform those services.
Oh yeah. Yep. Super good point. People have a hard enough time finding painters who can do the value-based painting approach.
The low price one, it can also be a hard one to architect at scale as well, because there's not enough margin in that business model to afford the infrastructure as you try to grow and try and scale, right? So a lot of times that will survive off of the martyrdom of the founder or the sole proprietor. And that's not something that scales beyond a single individual typically. But a value-based, company, you have a much larger labor pool to pull from, and there are like little, not like hacks, but tricks on how to, utilize your labor efficiently, depending on their competencies and skill sets, and pairing those with the right projects and homeowners. And then you also have a pretty wide pool of services, or people are willing to purchase that service as well. You're not niched down to people who are just looking for a great deal, but are willing to put up with a lot of like weird stuff. You're not niched down into, ultra high end, price is no issue, but, I want to see that this person has painted for at least 20 years and tell me exactly what kind of brush is going to be, on the job site. Both of those are harder to operate at scale. So your only competition is your ability to execute your business model, right? So how well can you or your team execute? That's a competency, that's a skill, that's a limiting factor for running a residential repaint company. But then also your model, the model that you've architected and that you dictate those executions through, is going to limit or dictate or determine the success or scale of your company.
Yeah. So my guess is, I know the answer to this question. I think it's probably blue ocean, but you may segment it further. How would you look at the commercial market?
So I'm not a domain expert in that. So I'll tell you like my outside perspective. It's probably a hybrid in the middle, right? So a lot of commercial outfits, they'll go cross country, but there's a continuum there, right? Because I also know, the big commercial painting contractors, they'll bump into each other even out of state, a handful of times. And there's only so many stadiums being built, depending on what you're niching down in, or maybe you're just what do they call it? Like a white box outfit, where you like come in and there's a commercial repaint, you turn it into a white box. Yeah, I'm certainly not your domain expert on that. My intuition tells me that, specialized industrial is if I want to win and I'm a competitive person, I'm competing
Yep.
in like a zero sum game. Like your loss is my gain.
Yep.
If I'm in commercial, that's probably like halvesies. And I'll just say in residential, it's like your win is my gain. Your loss ends up typically being my loss because the overall tide goes down. It's much more about co-opetition. Residential repaint, right? It's highly fragmented, low barrier to entry. You're not going to be limited by your percentage of market cap in this game. At least I live in the Twin Cities area, so we're like not a coastal city. We're also not like a Chicago for Midwest, but we're a pretty we're a pretty good metropolitan area. So
Yeah.
factor that into how I philosophize about the business too.
Yeah. I would love for you to run us through the math example that you do with like a
Sure.
Sherwin-Williams paint store.
So this is something I did a while ago. I'm trying to think of where I did it first. I might have done it on just a social media website for fun. But when we started the gathering of Minnesota painters, was the first thing I did when I got everybody into the room. So I got out a flip chart and I said, hey, we're going to do this thing called cooperation. Most of the time when any of you or I walk into a paint store, people are really weird. Painting contractors are really weird people. And it gets very competitive and standoffish and like, oh, maybe like I won't tell you who this, or I don't know, just bizarre stuff for someone who isn't used to that modus operandi, right? You come in, you're like, oh, this feels a little odd, a little weird. So first thing I did, get the flip chart out and say basic math, right? Here's the premise. None of us are limited by our percentage of market cap because the market cap is so huge. And long before we run into issues of having large percentages that we have to divvy up between us, we're going to run into issues of hitting the cap of our ability to scale a business model, right? And so what's the basic math on that? You say, how many Sherwin stores are you willing to drive to, right, for geography area, right? Because there's a lot of Sherwin stores in the state, in the Midwest, in the country, but we're only willing to service an area that drives, within around, there's like 20 stores that fit the geographic area that we're willing to drive through. And you say, how much paint and sundries do they sell that are relevant to the services that I offer? So I don't do like concrete coatings. We don't do crazy industrial stuff. There's like 5, maybe 6, 7 products that fall within the residential bread and butter things that we do. So I look for the revenue of that. Find out if it's an average size store. Like let's say you're in the top. If it's like a quarter deviation from the average store, then do the math and bring that down to the median, multiply it by the total stores. If you start with a normal size store first, it's a lot easier because you just multiply that by 20 because it is an average size store. Then you ask Sherwin and they would know this. You'd say, what percent market cap in this geographical area do you have of those products and sundries? All right. And they know that answer and they tell you. Right. So then you take that revenue. So you have the median store, products that they sell, multiply geographical area, number of stores that you're willing to service, then divide that by the percentage of market cap that they hold to get the total market cap. Right. So there's typically like an Ace Hardware, box stores, maybe a local distributor, right? And those are things that Sherwin would be competing against. And then let's just say for the sake of math, they say like, oh, we have 50% of the market cap in that. So you multiply it by 2. Look at like an average industry benchmark for materials. And now if you have trouble with this exercise, you probably aren't job costing and don't know your percentages. So just use 15%. On average, painting company will spend 15% on paint and sundries. Average. Okay. Don't send me mean emails. That's an average. So then you divide that revenue by that 0.15%, and that gives you the total revenue that paint and sundries is relevant to, right? So now you know the total market in your geographical area. It's a big number, right? You start doing the math and you're like, oh, if everybody in here became, a $10 million company, we'd be okay, right? Yeah. Now, not everybody is. Maybe one person is. And okay, now you at least have a grounding, a perspective of what reality is. And that's like a healthy exercise to do in life. Get grounded in the facts, get grounded in the numbers to make sure you have an appropriate perspective. I can give you 2 more examples of this. I have a leaky like bathtub, like my bathtub, like after the kids take a shower, it kind of like leaks or after they give them a bath, it's like dripping. And I'm like stressed out. I'm like, oh man, this is like a little stressful. Like how much am I spending in my utility bill? Like, should I call a plumber out here and tighten it up? I'm like, it's probably like a $200 trip charge. Should I do this or not? Emotionally, I'm stressed out, but then I start doing the facts, right? So I sit there for a minute and I count the number of drips.
Is this
And
a
then I
real
go,
story?
this is a real story.
This a real?
I
Okay.
might, yeah, so I count the number of drips.
This is what you stress out about.
So I initially get stressed out,
Okay.
and then I go to the facts, and I say, well, what are the facts?
Okay.
Right. So I count the number of drips in a minute, and then I go, well, how many drips are in a gallon, and what's my cost per gallon? And I end up doing the math, and it's like, okay, this is costing me $2. No, it's costing me 5 cents a week. I'm spending 5 cents a week with this drippy thing. I'm no longer stressed out. All the stress goes away.
Yeah.
Goes away. And then I start doing the math of like, well, how much is that per year? And I'm like, well, if I did get a trip charge out here of $200, what's the cost of that capital over the year? I'm like, oh, I'm actually saving money by not having a plumber come out here because I can put that $200 to work in the market or on investment and make more money than I am losing in this drippy thing. Now we'll probably get it fixed because it's kind of annoying, but that's just an example of how you take stress, go through the facts, go through numbers, make it less stressful. The second thing is, this was years ago. I felt like we were spending a lot of money on food. So then you go to the US FDA or whatever it is, and you see what is the average. They have like a budget, normal, and like high spending family budgets. You say, okay, we're actually spending within the normal range based off the data of the US Census. Since then, we moved next to Whole Foods and Trader Joe's. So now there is no budget. But that was an example in the past where I got stressed out about how much money we were spending on food, seemingly, right? You see like, oh, for this avocado, we didn't even eat it. It's brown. I can only imagine how much money we're spending, right? And then you go through the facts, how much money are we actually spending? What's the national average? It gives you a benchmark to go against. So
yeah, facts over feelings.
yeah. Okay, so that's philosophy one. We can dig more into it if you want, or I can go to number two.
Yeah, no, I have one follow up there. So I use that example, right? I heard it first at the Nick Slavic's Ask a Painter Live winter retreat that we were on.
Just to be clear, he got it from me. Okay, if he said it.
No, I always
taught him everything he knows.
I always cite you. Yeah, no, I
should cite me. I basically own half of his company if you think about it, for how much I've helped him.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, no, I got a draft on that authority whatever way I can, right? So no, I cite you the Sherwin-Williams example because I actually was on a call, and I'm going to leave all the specifics out of this conversation, but I was on a call yesterday with a company that said they're a little under $1 million in revenue. They serve an metropolitan area that is over 1 million in population. It's 800,000 where the actual metro area and then surrounding areas. And they're again a little under 1 million in residential repaints per year. And they told me that they think that they need to either expand their geography further, which again, they're already over 1 million people. I think it's about 1.4 in their service area, or they need to go downstream more and they're not that top craftsmanship that you were saying. They're the value-based approach. And I ran them through this example. I actually looked up St. Paul, Minneapolis. It looks like you guys are around the same market cap in general as this, and the fact that you guys are on track to 11, 12, some sort of pretty high number in 2022, and that they're probably not capped out. Oh, they said they serve the top 10% of the market. So there is that.
That's what everybody says.
Yeah, right. And so the reality is it's probably a little bit more than that. But I said, if you guys are at 11 or 12 million with a similar population, my bet is that they can probably bump up without having to go statewide or something, or go, downstream and start competing more on price. And that's where I think a lot of painting companies, they think they've tapped it out or whatever, but they're not actually sitting down doing the math.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to visualize if you even just hone it into one store. And you're like, man, I'm if you're $1 million, let's say, I'm paying $150,000 of paint and sundries. I'm like, I need to go to new geography, right? And it's like, well, that store is selling about $2 million of of revenue, and let's say half of that is relevant to the services that you provide. That's like $1 million. You're like, well, easy math. You're 15% of the revenue of that store. That's one store. Yeah. And so then it's like, oh, so that means that there's 85% that they're selling that are relevant to what I provide that I'm not doing
in that store,
in one store, right? And I like to drive around, and let's say it's an average store. I don't know what their area is, but say it's an average store, and they like to service 10 stores, right? And so suddenly you're like, oh, Okay. So I don't know. Hopefully it starts to click with people. Maybe like you need a visual or something like that. But
Yeah.
um, it was very odd as I got into running my own painting company and went to Sherwin stores, how standoffish painting business owners were. It was just weird. I was like, huh, this is weird. I mean, it would make more sense in like different market conditions, but for this market, it's truly bizarre behavior, which I think is ultimately rooted in insecurity and maybe just anger. There's a lot of anger in the painting industry, but I think it's ultimately all rooted in insecurity.
Yeah. Awesome. So what are we calling philosophy one there?
Okay, blue ocean.
Philosophy one is blue ocean. Okay. What
You
is
call a lot of
philosophy?
things. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You call a lot of things. Blue ocean, growth mindset, cooperation.
Cooperation. What is philosophy two?
So two would be the long game versus short game. This is a philosophy how you run your business. And then I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I said the only reason I'm playing the long game is so I plan on doing this for a long time, right? That's the only reason it's a good strategy.
I
Otherwise,
feel
if I
like
run this,
anytime things aren't going well in my life, I say, well, I'm playing the long game. But I
as
think the
long as you
long
plan on
game is
doing it,
longer than most people realize. Like we want instant gratification. The long game is like a years long game. It's not 3 6 months.
yeah, if you're interested in doing it for a long time, right? If you're not interested in doing things for a long time, or you have uncertainty about doing things for a long time, short game would be your best
Quick wins.
strategy to
Yeah.
optimize utility or whatever
Get in, get
you're
out.
starting to measure. So uh, maybe that's like a more simple philosophy, but it's just this concept of playing the long game versus playing the short game. And I like getting rooted in things that are super, super simple, which is you play the long game and you plan on being in something for a long term. Right?
Yep.
If you're not going to be in it long term, don't play the long game. Play the short game. Play the medium game. You know, hedge your bets. Do some risk management, things like that. But being it for a long game, that's the only philosophy that I hold. It's a philosophy that we have at Paris Painting and then larger in all holdings as well.
Yep.
How that plays out practically, right? It's probably the most basic way I can explain it would be is you're focusing more on your balance sheet than your P&L, right? And P&L is important, and you can't have a world-class organization without a strong P&L. One, it's the gas that allows you to do cool things within your company. It provides the margin for infrastructure and all that. But making sure that you're properly stewarding that balance sheet is important as well. It's the classic, the golden chicken and the golden egg, right? And so you want to make sure you have a healthy tension in that, right? You never just want to focus 100% on that golden, maybe it's the golden goose. Maybe I don't know what it's called.
No
The
idea.
goose, do gooses lay eggs? Golden
I'm
goose. Let's
pretty
call it the
sure.
golden
I
goose.
don't think I don't think they don't give live birth. So yeah, I'm pretty sure they're the
Okay.
eggs.
Did you know that some sharks lay eggs and some sharks give live? All right. That's a tangent.
This is what I was afraid of with this
This is
episode.
what all right. So gooses, like you never want to focus too much on the golden goose, right? And
Yeah.
then forsake the golden eggs, right? You want to make sure that you're properly harvesting and stewarding those golden eggs, but you also never just want to focus on the egg harvest and neglect the goose, right? So you have to have a healthy tension, a healthy balance on the both. For the long term, probably want to steer a little bit more towards stewarding that goose, right? Because it's a goose that's going to continue to produce those profits, those eggs for a long time. And the golden prize in these businesses is stable, passive income. And a lot of times someone will achieve one, but not both, right? So I don't know if you ever talked to a business owner, but they're like, yeah, my profits are pretty stable. Pretty much every year we make this much money, but it's certainly not passive, right? It's a lifestyle business, right?
Yep.
It's your classic lifestyle business. Lifestyle business is where you don't have to work very hard, but you make a lot of money. But if you stop showing up, it would crumble pretty fast, right? You stop getting money, right? So you have like this awesome job, which is great. It's a God bless America scenario.
Yep.
Their scenario is, I have passive profits, but they're not very stable, right? It's like your classic owner who steps out and there's like an individual or maybe a few individuals or a little team that are running things, and it's great for like 2 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years. But it's not stable. It doesn't last forever. There's not inertia there. There's not momentum. And you have passive income, you have passive profits, but they're not stable for the long term. So to be able to harvest both stable and passive income, passive profits. That's really like the golden mark for a painting business.
So as you know, my background in another life is in finance, investment banking, and private equity.
The old P&L, the old balance sheet.
Yeah, and I'm not 100% sure what you mean. So if I'm not 100% sure, probably other people aren't.
So P&L would be
Not
like
much
your
capital investment in a painting company, like trucks and things like. Is that kind of
For
what
sure.
you're referring to? Things like that, or
good. So I would say, so painting companies are not super capital intensive. So it's great
Yeah.
that you clarify this because it gets to a point. You look at another elements of balance sheet as like brand, or
equity and
culture, brand and culture, right? Those would be
okay.
the two big balance sheet items. So you can squeeze out your brand equity for the sake of short-term profits, right? You can squeeze and squeeze and get all the profits you want in 2023 to the detriment, to the lowering of your balance sheet of your company's brand, right? The way you do this is, maybe just cutting some staff and having a thinner layer of client
So the customer
service.
service is kind of falling through the cracks.
Yep, because it falls through the cracks, but you're not
Right.
paying that overhead, so you're squeezing out some more profit.
You get
Your
profit
brand
on it.
equity goes down, right? Culture would be the same thing. You're driving people a little too hard, spreading them a little too thin. You're not making those deposits that pay off in the long term, right? So you're squeezing. It's going good for this year's profit line, but over the next handful of years, that's going to hurt as that culture diminishes. Culture is a big asset that the company has.
So it's basically what you're talking about is reinvesting back into your business through a team, through treating your team well, through making sure that the customer is well served versus pulling out the highest net profit possible, but maybe kind of leaving some pieces on the table there.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, another element would be your labor in the past 10 years, right? The market is in the past 10 years. I tell you this on every episode, past 10 years, I don't know why you'd ever work with a marketing company.
The grandpa who the walked uphill in the snow to school there and back kind of story.
Well, the last 10 years have been great. So I was actually walking downhill because
uphill.
labor has been the real nut to crack for painting companies to scale and to thrive. And you can squeeze your labor and you can really hammer them down for the sake of this year's profit
loyalty.
But what an asset it is to have when painters, subcontractors are continually knocking on your door saying, hey, do you have work for me yet? Hey, my buddy's working for you. I'd love to work for you. What can we do to make this work? There's a lot of value there in the long term.
Yeah. What do you, I don't want to go too far off, but with the labor market, that has been a big pain point over the last couple of years. How do you feel about it now moving into 2023?
I think the number one thing to focus on is professionalizing your business, because why would a painter or subcontractor want to work for 99% of these quote unquote business owners that run painting companies, right? They're disorganized. There's no job description. There's no path to career advancement. And it's like the biggest complaint, but it's also the biggest issue. And I think the issue starts with the business owners. So I would just say that's like another, in my mind, it comes to philosophy number one, which is blue ocean, where there is an unlimited stock of painters who are dissatisfied and frankly abused by their current employers for us to pull from, right? Far beyond where I have to start concerning myself with the market cap of labor and be more constrained by our business's ability to scale, how well we can execute that model before I start to deal with there's not enough painters out there.
Yeah. And that's
such I would go back to that blue ocean mindset of you don't even have, it's kind of like with clients. Like with clients, if you can answer your phone, show up, not insult them, and deliver them a quote, you got a pretty good chance of landing that bid here in 2022, right? Same thing with labor. Like we all like to complain about labor, but if you can put an ad that isn't offensive to people can hear about your company in a way that inspires them. They show up and you have some semblance of organization and structure for them to thrive in. You've got a pretty good chance of recruiting that individual, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I saw a Facebook ad that said, don't show up drunk and we'll hire you as a painter. And I was, it's not going to probably attract the right kind of painter you're looking for. I guess they won't show up drunk, so that's good, but it's a pretty crap ad.
Yeah. There's no good painters out there, quote unquote. Somehow Sherwin-Williams sells more and more paint every single year. More gallons get applied. There are plenty of painters out there. There are lots and lots of painters, And if you can run some semblance of a professionalized company, they're going to want to work for you, because 99% of companies are abusing their painters. And why wouldn't they want to jump ship?
Yeah. Yeah. We don't have Amazon drones painting houses quite yet. So that paint's being applied by somebody. All right. We have philosophy 1, blue ocean / growth mindset / cooperation. Philosophy 2 is the long game. Invest into your business. Don't try to squeeze all your profit margins. You're going to
the golden goose. The golden goose.
The golden egg, all that. What's philosophy 3?
I'd say open book management. So this is a way, you call it transparency. Probably just call it transparency. Right? So it seems like you're taking notes. So
I'm always taking notes, man. Yeah, I'm learning.
I hope everyone who's listening to this is taking notes. I'm sure
it should be. Well, most of them are driving or out and about, but they should sit down and take some notes on this stuff.
Yep. But I would say transparency, open book management is the way that we operate our companies. It's another foundational cornerstone philosophy of business. And so there's a couple of concepts in there. Practically with open book management, what that looks like is we're very transparent how the company makes money and how people are compensated in their roles, right? So there's an overall business model, an org chart, a budget, financial systems in place, right? We'd say, here's an easy example, sales and marketing. Here's your budget that fits within the percentage of the business model that works. How you make money within that percentage is up to you, right? And it opens up a couple of fun conversations, which are, we've had people come and say, how can I'd like a raise. I'd like a raise. Yeah. Right? I don't know if any business owner has ever heard that before. I'd like a raise. The response is always like, that's fantastic. Tell me how that works. Right? The business model, the metrics, the KPIs, the cost on margin. It's how much most of our roles are compensated. It seems like you want to raise. That's awesome. Tell me how that's going to work. How much money do you want to make?
If they don't know,
it's never like, I'm never going to tell you no. I'm never going to tell you no. The answer is always, how can we?
Yeah.
Right? How can you make $200,000 next year as a sales rep at Paris Painting? Mm-hmm. You tell me, right? Yeah. So it seems like you're going to do this many bids. You're going to have this level or this size, average job size, right? Your skill is going to be developed to this level where you sell that percentage of jobs. You're going to generate, these many bids on your own. So when the business saves on that marketing cost, we'll give that to you, right? Whether we pay Google, we don't use Google, whether we pay a marketing service, I don't want to say, or use any marketing service that could be out there, or we pay that employee to self-generate that lead, doesn't matter to me, right? So then we start saying like, okay, here's how that would work. Here's how it does work. It's never no, it's always how can we. So that's open book management style. I'd also say like this transparency thing, that's like a practical use. Transparency is really easy when you don't have secrets to hide.
Yep.
Right? When you have secrets where you're trying to hide things, it's really, really hard. So this is like a philosophy of business from day one. So we hired, his name is Hoken. He's our first sales rep that was not, had not run a painting company before. Right. So I've been running my painting company. I had quote unquote bought painting companies before, which is really buying their book of business, their equipment, and then having them come on as staff and have them do sales. So it was always like highly intuition focused. But Hoken came over and he's like, what if somebody asked me a question I don't know? I'd say, shoot, you know what I would do? I'd be honest with them. Be honest with them and say, you know what? I don't know that answer. I actually have never painted a house before. What I do know is how to bid your house. And I don't know this technical question, but I can find out the answer and get back to you. Just be honest, right? We have nothing to hide, right? I'm not like trying to like, hide the weenie and say, hey, Hoken has never painted a house before. My goodness, don't tell anybody that. No, yeah. I don't care. He's gonna be a world-class salesperson. He's gonna find the client's needs, identify the scope, present an appropriate solution to it, and then have the emotional intelligence to close the job. Right? He's gonna do it all in an organized way so we can deliver a world-class product at the end.
And homeowners will appreciate that. If anything, it'll bode in your favor.
Yeah. Now, sure. Like again, people can message me their mean emails after I do these podcasts and say, well, what about the commercial
Does
industrial
this
project
happen? Does this happen? Because you filmed a couple podcasts with us. Do you get mean emails?
only on yours. No, I'm
Only
just kidding.
cool. Awesome. Good to know.
Makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Sure, specialty scenarios, but in general, I just say be honest with people. Just be honest. If someone says like, "Oh, why didn't you get back to my email?" Say, I'll be honest. I pieced out for 3 days and turned my phone off. It's something I do every year. It's kind of like a silent retreat meditation. And I had a lot of emails and I didn't get to yours. I'll get to it the next day. Right? Don't be like, "Oh shoot, they're gonna find out I'm a fraud." I think that, so I talked about the insecurity early on. Like there's a deep, deep root of insecurity in this industry that's rooted around, I think, like they're going to find out I'm a fraud. And part of that is just the origin story of most small business owners in residential painting. They come, there's two origin stories. One is my dad did it and I took over the company, or I painted with him for a while and started my own company. The second origin story is very similar, probably to the second part of that first one, which is, so I worked for a guy and it was not great.
Yeah.
That's like the most common story in the industry. I worked for a guy and it wasn't that great. Most companies are not great to work for, which gets me back to the blue ocean concept on labor, right? So they end up starting their own company, but that doesn't go, they're like, I'm a fraud. I don't know everything about business. I actually don't know everything about painting, but I know this is better than what I was doing. Now I have all this insecurity. So I'm build these walls, get combative with other painting contractors in the store. Jason walks in all hunky-dory, happy, and starts trying to talk to people, and immediately gets like people like fighting him and like being mean to him. And I'm like, geez, this is weird. This is weird, right? Because it's weird for the market condition of residential repaint. You think there'd be a lot more cooperation. But then you start to like get into the industry a little bit more, really find out the roots of the origins and like make a hypothesis on the psyche. I think there's just a lot of people are going to find out I'm a fraud fear that drives that behavior.
So let's say someone listening to this feels that way. Let's say they feel scared.
That's fine if you're a fraud.
How do they fix it? What do they do?
So I would just like, I remember, you don't have to just be honest. I mean, what you are is good enough. Okay. What you are is good enough. And I say like early on, I worked with a handful of general contractors and they'd be like, yeah, I'm going to need you to, paint that sconce over there. I'd be like, okay, just what is a sconce? And some it's like, just what is a sconce? I don't know what that is. I don't know what a sconce is. I painted in college, started my own painting company. We do a great job, but I don't know what a sconce is. What does that word mean? Right. Now, a lot of people would be like, okay, sconce. Yep. Yep. And then they get back home and they're like, what is a sconce? And like, oh, frick, I should ask this question about what color it should be. Right. Because now I figure out it's a sconce. I'm like, okay, just do you want that to be the same color as the wall or a different color?
Yeah.
Because that's going to make a difference in how I bid this. Right? You can identify it quickly, but what you are is good enough. That's what I found for myself. I was like, hey, GCs would ask me these questions all the time. They'd be like, I have no idea. Or they'd start talking to me about a project and be like, what does that mean? Yeah. And a lot of times they don't know. They're just like saying stuff.
What is a sconce?
I think it's that thing. I said it because it's a weird thing. I think it's the thing that's behind the light, when the light's on the wall. I think that's what it is.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to Google it because I actually don't know.
It is. I think it's like that thing. It's definitely the thing. So
this is the thing behind the light.
If it's a thing, then I'm right.
It's one of these things. Yeah. Just go ahead and paint that sconce. No worries.
If someone, like if your painter comes up to you and says like, hey, can you lay out my schedule for the next 3 weeks? If you're trying to hide it, then that's a hard question to answer. Yeah. Or you could say like, hey, I don't actually know. I have your next week booked out. After that, like I'm flying by the seat of my pants, man. I'll be honest with you. Like I'm scaling this company. We're like, I'm burning the midnight oil. I'm doing the best I can. I've got a good track record of surviving. So we'll figure it out. Yeah. Right? That is better than people can read through you pretty quick. You can get along a little bit, like trying to be, do-si-do around people. But people sniff that out pretty quick. I think you just get more respect when you're honest with people. Yeah. Just say, this is what I am. This is what I can do. No, I don't know what you're talking about. No, I don't know the answer to this. I'm actually bad at that. Like people are, it's what you want in life too. Like you want to be appreciated for the things that you actually can do and are good at. Yeah. Those are a couple examples, homeowners questioning Hoken on like, hey, what would you do? Well, I don't know. I can't even think of a question. And then he called me. I'd be like, just be honest with them. Tell them you don't know. And like, well, what if they like hammer you? Like, how don't you know this? Say like, just tell them that you're a financial analyst.
Yeah.
And you just quit your job. You start working with a painting company because you saw the future and what was going to happen here, and you're excited about it. And yeah, you don't know a ton about painting, but you do know how to get customers' needs, accurate scope, identify the right solution, given the basic knowledge that you have. If you don't know the answer, you have great resources around you. You just tell them that.
Yeah, people value transparency, and it's refreshing because it's unusual. So when you're transparent, they trust you more, and they're even if it weren't ideal, oftentimes it's actually bodes in your favor because you're so open about it.
And it's easy to do when you're not trying to hide things, right?
Yeah.
I think people hide a lot of stuff because of that root of insecurity. And it's just be okay with who you are, be okay with your level of competency. Likely it's more than enough for this market.
Yeah. Okay. So the philosophy 3 is transparency. What is philosophy 4?
Call it democratizing versus dictating, right? Or democracy versus dictator. So this is not like a political debate around structures, because there's no debate. Dictatorship is actually the best model. If you have Marcus Aurelius as like the dictator, like the one guy leading everything, it's phenomenal. It's the best. Like that's going to outperform democracy any day of the week, right? The problem is that that's not sustainable in the long term, right? So then you get Nero, and then things go pretty bad, right? So if you have Marcus Aurelius, this is great. Everybody's happy. The kingdom is phenomenal, performing well.
High risk, high reward scenario here.
Yeah, it's most effective. It's how every painting company starts. I say most, but I can practically say every, and people, even if they want to email me something mean, I can say it'll be fine, right? Democracy is much more stable in the long term, right? America is, I may get so many emails. Democracy.
Hey, everyone listening, don't stop emailing Jason mean things.
Stop emailing me.
Stop emailing mean things.
Cuss words.
These are his viewpoints. You don't have to agree with them.
You can cuss at me. I can handle it.
Stop sending mean stuff. No more.
Just kidding. People don't send me that much. But everyone, it's the ones that you do get that you're like, then you try and respond to them, and you realize that there's not a high level of reading comprehension there. And
it's like a social media, war. Like, it's just best not to get involved.
So anyways, democracy is much more stable over the long term. America has proven that out through much longer stability, staying on top. But dictatorships are much more effective. Then you start to get into business philosophies of when is it appropriate to have a dictator, and when is it appropriate to have democratize, whether it's a democracy or you say democratize the decision making, right? Okay. Or even all the way to the point of democratizing the equity of a painting company. Mm-hmm. And so, there's not like an easy answer for, right? Because in the startup, it's much better to have a dictatorship. As long as you can have high performing key individuals in place. I prefer dictatorships in general. I'd rather be under Marcus Aurelius than whatever we have going on in the US right now, right? But when Marcus Aurelius goes away, now it's like you said it really well, high risk, high reward. So a lot of painting business owners start thinking through those decision metrics. How long are you going to be active and driving and leading that painting company? The default is every day of their life, right? But they're not typically businesses. They're typically, great jobs, self-employed painting contractors, maybe a self-employed sales rep, maybe a self-employed president. But that dictatorship eventually ends. And then if you've got that same structure that's going to continue, there's a risk and reward structure. There's high risk, high reward for who steps in that seat next, versus democratizing the decision-making, democratizing the leadership, all the way to democratizing the equity of the painting company. Makes it much more stable over the long run.
Yeah, it's kind of another way, I think, of looking at, Nick has that. I think it's weird because I've never heard of a turkey truck, but he's got that weird turkey truck, tag.
Hey, once again, where do you think you're learning that from? I'll just tell you. So I give back.
Was it from you?
Actually, for sure, 100%.
What is a?
No, I didn't make that up. It's a very, very common phrase. But once I told him, he started saying a lot.
Is Nick is a Minnesota thing or something?
We're giving him a hard time. We're giving Nick a hard time. Nick is a world-class individual. The way that he approached getting off of the island of his painting company set his path on the amount of life success that he's had since that moment. Right? Most people who have been grinding, grew up in the family business, grinding on their own for 10 years, finally find out what professional painting businesses look like by getting off the island. Mm-hmm. get pretty bitter pretty fast, right? Pretty defensive, pretty bitter, pretty angry. He chose.
Why is that? Because they've been doing it the other way for so
There's a
long?
lot of trauma and pain to like. I mean, Nick has spoken openly about this. He's like, yeah, I wasted like 10 years and that opportunity cost,
Yeah, it's
I'll never
painful
get
to look at
over.
that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, how you approach trauma, we go deep into that rabbit trail as well. But I give Nick a hard time because it's fun, because he's like a big face in the industry. But he's a really, really great guy, strong individual, phenomenal character. But I did teach him everything he knows.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, turkey truck test is, if the
Yeah.
person running the show gets hit by the turkey truck, what happens to the shareholders of that business? So it's like, do your wife and kids keep getting little distribution checks every quarter, or does that business go away right away? So
Yeah.
there's not a right or wrong, right? The lifestyle businesses are the default in this industry, and those can be phenomenal. Right? It's kind of like the dentist who runs his own practice, right? It's like, God bless America. This is awesome, right?
Yeah.
You can make you can make more money than a cardiac surgeon being a lifestyle business in the painting industry, right? It's great. It's like a little too good right now, and I don't think it'll last that way forever. I think it will get a lot more competitive and more professionalized. We talked about that on previous episodes.
Yeah.
But there is this like new paradigm that I've been trying to introduce, and I think people are starting to catch on to, of like, you can also build a business that's going to deliver stable passive income for the rest of your life, right?
Yeah.
That's also an option, right? And it's like that awareness is step one, right? So like, this is an option. Okay, painting companies is what it can look like. Getting off the island, seeing what's out there, getting exposed to like bananas and things like that. It's all good for the human psyche.
Yeah.
So, no, it's all. I wouldn't say human psyche. It's all good for personal actualization.
Yeah. Yeah. So the one thing that it kind of stood out to me regarding the turkey truck test is I always viewed that as systems and processes. Your owner operator, if they're doing everything and no one can fill in, then they get hit by the turkey truck, everything's going to fall apart. But one thing that just stood out to me with this is it's also the decision making, the culture, the kind of the leadership of it, not just the systems and processes. If other people are involved, because market conditions sometimes change, scenarios sometimes change, and if they're involved, then that can continue to run even when things shift. Whereas if it's a dictatorship, the moment a curveball comes, no one's going to have any idea what to do.
This is how businesses work in general, right? This is how like companies grow and sustain like over long periods of time. This is not how painting companies are run, right? But it's how like you go to the Fortune 500 list, any major, like this is how business works. This is how business. This is called like business, right? And business is a pretty foreign concept in the painting industry. Won't say that way forever. Listen to previous episodes, please. Also, don't email me mean things and saying that I don't understand. There's a lot of great painting companies out there. I agree. You are definitely one of them. So you don't need to email me about that. But in general, it's not like we're like in a pretty niche space, and it's just like a weird period of time where the modus operandi has been, lifestyle business, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But it shouldn't be the proliferation that it is in the market, right? That's like an odd thing. There's definitely more incentive than that, and that hasn't clicked yet, hasn't switched over. We've talked about a little bit in previous episodes, but that certainly seems like the conditions are laid for that to change.
Yeah. You listening, you're the best painting company, so be happy. And we're going to have...
You're not a fraud. You're fine.
Not a fraud. You're doing great. And we're going to have Jason, you're going to come live in the Facebook group, because I'm going to try to pull out some of these haters. We're going to try.
I love the haters, man.
We're going to bait them, and we're going to get them to leave something, and then I'm going to
definitely bait them.
Then I'm suspending them. So that's
you don't have to just give them my personal cell number and they can call me.
Yeah.
Goes straight to voicemail anyways. My phone doesn't ring unless you're in my contacts. Philosophy number 5, the hard way is the real way. This is just a philosophy of like, if you want to achieve something worthwhile, it takes work, right? The most fun part of running a business is usually this time of year, because you get to put your plans on the whiteboard and they look awesome, and you're high-fiving each other for how much money you're going to make next year. And it's super fun. But the reality is Yeah. The reality is like, that's called uninformed optimism. That's the ivory tower. And if you want to achieve results, you got to get out of the ivory tower. You got to get into the ground, the mud, and you got to plow the
Rubber meets the
fields.
road.
Yep, you got to plow the fields, right? And
Yeah.
hard work is the real work. Um, I don't know how else to say it. It's this concept of, if you want to really integrate culture, values, performance into a company, you got to go shoulder to shoulder. You got to bear that yoke with those around you, and you got to plow the fields.
Yeah.
There's no shortcut to that.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, with marketing, with my industry in particular, there's so much hype. There's so much, everyone's always doing great, right? Everyone's doing great. This new thing's works the best thing ever. And I think it's frustrating to me to see, because I know it's not true, right? It's always everyone tries to make it look really easy, right? There is no easy button. You have to be good at what you do, and you have to put in work to make it work, right? That's the long-term success. There's someone I listen to, I like a lot. I'm sure you probably listen to Alex Hermosi. He runs a podcast. He's very successful, coaches people, built a lot of really successful business. But Alex Hermosi says that people as a whole tend to grossly underestimate the amount of work it takes to become massively successful. And you've talked about this, the entrepreneur, the business owner, you have to have a high tolerance for pain for a pretty extended period of time if you're going to really create something magnificent. And so
And a
this, I think,
passion that will push you beyond rational thought, right?
yeah.
Because it's a lot of times, and it's not every scenario. So don't email me, please.
Dude, you are hung up on these emails.
Traumatized.
You're saying it's not happening, but I know it's happening.
I'm actually speaking it to existence, unfortunately.
You are now. You are. Yeah, you're gonna get tons of them.
So it also requires quite a bit of passion, because it's a tremendous amount of pain, non-optimistic reality staring in the face, with no guaranteed outcome, right? So you're not guaranteed to be successful just because you put in the work. Nobody is there like, wow, he's working hard. This is great. This is not like a law firm where you get to like clock your hours.
Partner eventually.
You work really hard. It's like, okay, like he's putting his dues. Like we'll pay him more per every hour he works. He's gonna make more money. This is great.
Yeah.
You can work really, really hard as an entrepreneur, and you can get hit with a curveball, and you can actually lose money.
Yep.
Not just make money, not make much money, not make no money, but lose money, right? That's how business works. And you have to have like an irrational passion, I believe, is why we look. When someone says they're entrepreneurial, it's like, where's that irrational passion? Because you're not guaranteed a result. It's going to be super painful. And there gonna be times where there's just not a lot of optimism in front of you.
Yeah. It'll be dark. Like you said, that you're chewing glass, you're staring off into the dark abyss. That's entrepreneurship. I want to push back on you a little bit, Jason, a little bit on this. So there's a quote that I like, that I live by. I agree with you in a lot of ways, but I also want to push back for anyone listening. The only way you fail is if you quit. That's what I live by. And I think you hit these curveballs, right? You can have a business, you can have a painting company, and something happens, so you get sued, whatever occurs, and you actually could lose that business. You could lose money. You could get to the point where you're bankrupt, right? This happens to people. You have to go get a job. But if you want to own a business, and I want to caveat this, and you're willing to implement self-growth, so you're willing to learn from people who have done it before, you're willing to do whatever you need to do to learn, not just keep beating your head against the wall, because that is a way to fail forever. You're willing to learn and adapt. Eventually you will succeed. I sincerely believe that, but it's probably going to take longer than you want it to, and you're going to enter darker times than you wish that you were in.
Yeah, there's like macro failure and micro failure, and what is failing, right? Do you ever actually fail if you don't quit?
Silicon Valley loves when you fail, man. You're supposed to fail like 50 times. Then you're winning, supposedly.
So there's bankruptcy laws written in the US that encourage taking risks and swinging big and all those things.
We have a bit more padding than in a lot of places.
A little more padding. Yep, a little more padding. Now it's not like a get out of jail free card. There are real consequences to that. And to your point, if you spend 3-5 years building a company, sacrificing a lot and don't make any money, is that a failure? Yes, no, depends on your reaction to it, right? Over the long term. Micro failure, I would say, That's a big fail.
Yeah.
But macro, can you overcome that? Can you take that as a learning point and not quit? You are not a failure. That business endeavor did fail, right?
Yeah. And
That
that's
business
important
endeavor failed,
distinction.
but you're not going to fail long term. You are not a failure. You can still be a success. And what is success, right? What is failure? We're all on this earth temporarily.
Here we go.
So
Yeah.
we have this limited sphere of influence, and
Putting on my seatbelt.
if we learn anything from the ancient Egyptians,
Yeah.
it's that cats, pictures rule the internet.
They do. Yeah, I have here we go. I have an app called Cat Facts. Annoys the crap out of people. You can just hit it, and if I want to send, I have a circle of friends that I'm in a text chat with, and I'll just send them like 6 facts about cats, the most random things in the world. But if anyone wants to,
okay, we got one more. We got one more before the listeners all
number
drop off.
6.
I don't know if you have. Yes.
Wasn't that number 5? Okay.
Number 5 was hard way is the real way.
All right. What's 6?
Number 6 is there's always a choice.
Okay.
This is a philosophy. There's always a choice. And, I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example that's upbeat, but maybe let's think of one where it's like, we can't fire that person because of X, Y, Z. It's like, well, you can fire that person and then you deal with X, Y, Z. You do have a choice. You can do that. Or you could say like, oh, we can't paint that person's house a second time because they don't like the color and whatever, then we won't make any money. It's like, well, you can paint that person's house for free and not make any money.
Yeah.
That's an option. Trying to think of some better ones. It might be like,
you can use the one that we discussed before this.
Yeah. It might be like, hey, I had this midlife crisis and, and I started a marketing painting company and I signed up for the army and I just got my schedule.
Back up. There's no midlife crisis, so we'll restart. We
never
never
life crisis. You're gonna live a very healthy life.
Now, no, these are life choices.
You do cold tub stuff, so that's good for longevity, I think.
Plus, dude, I'm a spring chicken. Are you kidding? 37. I'm just getting started. But continue.
So this is actually okay. So you go into the book of Genesis. There's a lot of debate around what age is it? It's like 134. Now, I would say that was more descriptive than prescriptive. I don't think there actually is that limit, but these are things that my wife and I debate on. So you could say quarter life crisis. I'm not sure if it's biblical or not, but we can roll with it. And anyways, you get the schedule for the army. It says, okay, shoot, I've got my drills, during the Thursday, Friday of Expo, PCA. National Guard. I can't, looks like I can't go to Expo, right? Because if I skip those drills, they put me in jail, right? Because I'm government property during that period of time. It's like, well, you can skip those drills, go to PCA Expo, and then we'll all pray for you and your family while they don't see dad.
Yep. Yeah. So this was a real decision on my mind.
Real decision. I think you made the right call. PCA Expo happens only once a year.
Only once a year.
It's out on that.
Very big industry event. Yep. Lose momentum. Don't get to connect with all the painting company owners, with the other industry vendors and partners. Yeah. Made my decision, but ultimately was able to get that worked out and do not have to go to jail. But it was a point where most people, if they were staring at that and they think, oh man, there's a chance I get put into jail. Oh, I don't have a choice. We always have a choice. Just what are you willing to, what consequences are you willing to endure?
Yeah. You want to weigh out those pros and cons and make the appropriate decision. But yeah, there's a lot of head trash on like, oh, I couldn't possibly deal with the pain of this decision or this result.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, is that worse or better than the pain of not doing that?
Sure.
So I think another example, like I was talking to a drywall painter or a drywall contractor. This was like 4 or 5 years ago. And he's like, yeah, I can't possibly bring, people in-house as W-2s because the workers' comp would be so high. I'm like, well, what's the benefit? Does the benefit outweigh the cost? Right? You're telling me you're spending all this money on issues with 1099s. How much does that cost you? Mm-hmm. How much would it cost you to do W-2 payroll taxes and everything? Right. And could you charge more to your clients with the certainty that comes with the control of W-2?
What else could you change?
And all that stuff. And I'm just like, I believe you, but just tell me if it's real. Did you actually think through this, or do you just have emotional trauma over the cost of something? Right. So a lot of times people get loss aversion or emotional trauma around the cost right? Firing somebody, giving something away that's unjust, dealing with an injustice, all those things. That cost is real, but does the benefit outweigh it? And that's something that there's always a choice in business, in life. There's always a choice. And don't forget the benefit. Don't forget to do the full analysis of weighing things out. You have a choice. You get to make that decision.
I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about entrepreneurship, and about business ownership. It puts you in the driver's seat, and you ultimately get to make your life decisions.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of it's that first principles reasoning approach of like what is true, what's actually real. Do I have preconceived parameters that I'm operating in, and what if I took those down? Would I still come to the same result? Going through that decision matrix, the quicker you can start. Just start with cluelessness as you approach a scenario. If you can do that like fast, it's not too weird. If you get lost in that for a little while, people lose faith and trust in your cognitive abilities. So sometimes those parameters that we operate in are useful for external expectations. If you can do it quick or do it in private, it's a good model to go through to just be entrepreneurial, be a little creative.
Ditch those preconceived notions and fear reactions.
Yep. Elon Musk is probably, the most popular first principle reasoning promoter of recent time. And, probably his, I don't know what would be his biggest success. Don't stop emailing me. They're emailing me right now. I can feel it.
Elon Musk, he's
I would just say the number one thing is how he's approached rockets, right? And so traditionally rockets are very, very expensive. It's expensive to get payload up into space because you build this super expensive rocket, bring it up into space, and then it's going to crash into the ground. And that costs a lot of money, right? To get payload up there. It's like, wow, that's odd. I mean, no wonder it's expensive. Can you imagine if everyone got into an airplane? We all got into, Delta airplane, got into aisle, 7G or whatever it is. And, flew over to Albuquerque, New Mexico. The pilot said, all right, everybody, put your backpacks on. We're going to have you all jump out of the plane. And then we're going to crash the plane into the crash pit, right? Imagine how expensive that would be if they crashed the plane every single time. You bought a ticket, basically paid for the construction of that plane. And every single time, or every time we drove to the office, we like opened the door, rolled out, and just crashed it into the crash wall.
Yeah.
Right. Just like there's walls at every single building where you crash them. Like, it'd be really expensive to drive everywhere. You had to pay for the construction of the vehicle every time, or at least the maintenance and repairs or the reconstruction. So, anyways, first principle there, you always have a choice. So, blue ocean philosophy.
Blue ocean one.
Transparency. No, long plan.
Long game is number 2.
Long game. Transparency, I'm pretty sure.
Transparency is number 3.
Democratize versus dictate.
Is
democracy versus dictator. Aurelius, Nero, America. 5. Hard way is the real way. Get out of the ivory tower, get in the mud, plow the field.
Put in that work. And then
number 6, there's always a choice.
Always a choice.
Brandon, you should go to jail if you have to.
Do whatever I have to, man. Do whatever I have to. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add? Anything exceptionally weird? Because this is our weird one.
I think I'm a pretty normal person. I don't think I have anything too weird.
I thought that.
Here's something that I've been thinking about. Okay, here's something.
Yeah.
We had a little Christmas party earlier this week, and we went bowling. Classic painters bowling. And society has like this irrational expectation for what is a good bowling game. Okay, and what is a good bowling frame?
Is all right.
Okay, I would say 80 is great. If you told me
80 is pretty bad. If you're under 100, you're awful.
There are 10 pins 100 feet away from me. I've got this ball.
Spare, strike.
I don't do this every day. And you're telling me that on average, I get 8 of the 10 pins to fall down? That's good. That's not bad. That's good. Also, there's the option of getting a 0 because you don't have that much leeway till it goes into this like 0 area.
Well, I always play with the bumpers. I don't do that.
Without the bumpers, 80 is a good score. I don't care what people say. Yeah. It's kind of like the fashion industry or the beauty industry. There's like this unrealistic expectation for women that they have to like put products on their face to be presentable. In bowling, 80 is a good score. You average 8 out of 10 pins down. That is fine. Society has unrealistic expectations for bowling, and I'm going to stand by that.
So everyone here, if you're bowling somewhere near an 80, you're doing excellent.
Just think about it. 8 out of 10 on average. These pins are 100 feet away, maybe multiple 100 feet away. I haven't measured it. You have a ball, and just also remember, you don't do this every day. You'd bowl like once every couple of years, maybe. You have to throw it, and if it goes too much to the side one way or the other, you get a 0. And somehow you still manage to get 8 out of 10 pins down on average over 10, whatever they're called, scores. I said the word
frames,
earlier. Over 10 frames. Yeah. So I'm gonna stick by that. I'm gonna stand by that. I think society's wrong, and just applying first principles reasoning, I think we should reevaluate, what the message that we're telling people who bowl, like myself.
Well, I appreciate that. I'll feel better about myself next time I go bowling now.
Sounds good, man. All right.
This is it, man. Wrap up the series. Painter's
Series
Dream.
4.
Yep. This is it. Thank you, Jason, for you're the first one. You're the first one of season 3. You're the first series. Hopefully people got a lot out of this, and appreciate you, man. Appreciate what you do for the industry and bringing facts and logic to everyone.
1 gallon at a time.
If you want to learn more about the topics we discussed in this podcast and how you can use them to grow your painting business, visit paintermarketingpros.com/podcast for free training, as well as the ability to schedule a personalized strategy session for your painting company. Again, that URL is paintermarketingpros.com/podcast. Hey there, painting company owners. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Give us your feedback. Let us know how we did. And also, if you're interested in taking your painting business to the next level, make sure you visit the Painter Marketing Pros website at paintermarketingpros.com to learn more about our services. You can also reach out to me directly by emailing me at brandon@paintermarketingpros.com, and I can give you personalized advice on growing your painting business. Until next time, keep growing.